Happy Saturday morning to everybody. Welcome to Hobby Hotline, episode 280. I'm Danny. That's Adam. For some reason, he wears a Red Sox hat, and it takes the two of us to equal out the great Uncle Rich Klein. How you guys
Hi
doing?
there. Good morning. Happy holidays. I'm
Yes.
happy to say this is a full hobby day for me. I begin with Hobby Hotline. And tonight, my local card store has their Secret Santa gift exchange trade night. And even though they raised the price of entry for it, they had 90 people sign up to do Secret Santa gifts this year.
It's
That's
exciting.
unbelievable.
And they were stunned by, despite the price ranges. Last year it was 3 tiers. This year it was just a, an adult and a child range. And yes, as an adult, you could go into the child range if you wanted to. It was more like that. And I'm excited. They always do. And they also, their owner, and it's a consortium of 6 stores locally in the area, 4 that are like franchises and 2 that are associated. So it's 6 stores getting together for the party tonight, and they'll have gifts and they'll have other things. And I heartily recommend. And the store is located. The store is called the Beast Sports Cards, and it's in Plano at basically Highway 121 and Preston Road. So I encourage anybody just to drop in tonight too, just to talk. There's going to be a lot of hobbies there. It should be a lot of fun.
Well, that's awesome. Adam, how are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Still obviously got the Hobby News Daily podcast. Saturday episode went up early today. Been doing a little more on TikTok. So I mean, if anybody's on TikTok, I'd post a lot on there. I used to post a lot on there. Hadn't really been getting back into it, but this past week I posted a couple of videos, getting back in the flow of things. So that's my hobby experience is content creation. So anytime that there's more content creation to be had, I'm always down for that.
And can I just say that what Adam does on Saturday mornings when he puts all the shows together for Hobby News Daily is, in my opinion, a wonderful and important to listen to breakdown of what's happened over the past week. I consider it a must listen, especially when I'm on the show, but I consider it a must listen every Saturday morning. And I really do recommend more people listen. I mean, and I understand it's his opinions, but it's a really good breakdown of what's happening at a specific time frame, a snapshot. I personally
appreciate
love
those kind words, Rich.
Very nice. Yeah, we both appreciate it, but kudos to Adam because it's not just the weekend. He's doing Monday through Friday to get up to the weekend. So he's the voice in the morning. A lot of people in the chat room already. Ruben says, "Holy crap, full face, Rich Klein."
It's been fixed. I preferred the box Rich Klein with this disembodied voice, but you can get a full face of me if you so desire.
Absolutely. Foul 5 ball. I'm going to miss a bunch of people here, but also want to give a shout out, as always, to the Sports Card Shop. They've got 2 locations now. I always say I have been to the Valparaiso, and fantastic. Definitely check them out. And we're usually up on the big board there. So to Rex and the whole family there, good morning and happy holidays. I think getting started this morning, we got to tackle the $700 million gorilla. I think we're looking at one of the craziest contracts and one of the biggest stories in sports in quite some time. Shohei the money and the cards. 700 million over 10 years. Obviously, there's this unique deferred contract, but Topps now does a printing. Adam, what do you know about this?
So broke the record. I mean, so Topps now, they pretty much do like the print on demand cards. I think the last previous record was Bernie Sanders, like that funny card where he was like sitting at the inauguration back in 2020. That I think that had like 97,000 or something like that. And then this card, the Shohei card, had 107,000, which is like, I mean, for me, it's the Topps now, I love the concept, and I think that Topps does a phenomenal job with capturing these types of moments with these cards. And then even, with rookie cards specifically. And I mean, just for the reason that I like Topps now is because like, how many cards there are. Like, sure, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're not pulling out a pack and you know what card you're pulling, but like for rookies or for like a moment like this with Shohei Ohtani or the Juan Soto, which I don't remember what the print run for that one was off the top of my head, but for that example, like, that there's 107,000. So if you're even comparing that to any amount of cards within like the flagship product or Topps Chrome, it's like, it's a significant difference in knowing how many cards there are versus like just having to guess and like really having no idea one way or the other if there are that many. So I mean, yeah, the Topps Now card, I think it's really cool, and I'm glad that I'm glad that Topps has continued the process. But I mean, I guess if you're selling 107,000 cards, like you're probably not looking to move on from the concept, I suppose.
Well, remember, you have also a very limited time frame to order these cards.
Right.
It's not like you have a month or 2 months to order a Topps Now card. You have a few days at the most. And so to have that many cards printed, I mean, Topps does a wonderful job. I get their emails, but to have that many cards ordered in one day just shows just how popular Shohei is.
It definitely shows his popularity. And it's not that it matters, because I think you buy this card for the moment, but does it devalue the card that there's 100,000 of them out there?
No. I mean, potentially, but also you're not really looking at with these types of cards. I feel like it's
about the moment.
More of like a collect. I feel like it's almost truly like a collectible. Like I feel like it's truly like it. The cards, the hobby does this funny thing where they just will accept that something won't be a certain way. Like they accept that like wide receivers and running backs in the NFL are like not as valued as quarterbacks, or it's like college jersey cards are not, even if they're signed, they're not as valuable as like the regular cards. It seems like, obviously with Topps and Bowman, I think things are changing a little bit, but at the same time, basically the hobby has decided in some circumstances that like these cards are not going to have long-term staying value. I mean, unless you're seeing like, and I'm going to use an example of a soccer card that I bought. Like there was a Gio Reyna card from the Bundesliga that has like a print run of like 200. So it's like, and it was his first Topps card. So it's like, you kind of maybe look at that and say, well, that one is obviously going to be different than this. And I actually did just crunch a couple numbers. Hypothetically, if all of the orders if all of the orders were orders of 20, which I don't know if they weren't, but I'm just using I'm lowballing the number a little bit here. That means Topps would have made $481,500 from the Shohei Ohtani card, just from the one drop in one day.
Not made. That would have been sales.
Well, in sales, right. Yes, correct. Right. But in sales, and that's also lowballing the number. Like it goes from one card is $9 to if you order 20, it's $5. So like basically, again, if you want to highball that number, they made $1 million. They had $1 million in sales because you double that for if every card was bought singularly. I don't know. You know what I'm saying.
Did anybody in the chat room buy, or did either of you guys? I'm just curious.
We already had somebody said they got their card in the mail. So yes, somebody in the chat room's already bought the card and has received it.
Steel City. Also in an Unops fashion, my Dodger Ohtani arrived already in the mail. Well, wow. Maybe this is some of the things that Fanatics will improve. If there's anything they're good at, it's logistics and shipping, hopefully.
Well, and I mean, the fact that there are the fact that there were 107,000 ordered and, somebody's already got it in the mail. Hopefully that maybe prove that like a concept that I think I was talking about on this show, like back in March, was like a March Madness set, and like getting these cards printed and shipped as quickly as possible because, to sort of stir up the excitement for it. So I think like, if they're able to do it this quickly with this many cards, I think this helps the concept of getting cards like this shipped out quickly.
And interesting comment here. I did not buy it as it was photoshopped. I'll wait and overspend for his first flagship Father's Day card out of 50.
Mm.
Does
Yeah.
that's an interesting comment. Does it bother either one of you guys that it's a Photoshop?
For how long has Topps been changing uniform caps and things like that on players? I mean, this is a tradition going back 70 years.
Yep.
So there's nothing new under the sun. They used to do now you can do a much better job with Photoshop, but I mean, they've been doing that for 70 some odd years. Come on, guys.
Rich, you know better than I do. They've had hats they've left blank and all sorts of stuff over the years to try to correct stuff.
Oh, there have been there's been some classic stuff that's not corrected. Like my favorite typo of all time on a types card is the 64 Topps Dennis Bennett card. I believe it's his name. He's paired with Rick Wise on a rookie card. This 19-year-old right-hander is only 18 years old.
But that's what they call him 19 on there.
So he's this 19. Yeah, I mean that the card actually says that there's no correction. That should have been corrected.
That's hysterical.
But that's from 1964. That's what I mean. Things happen, and the photo. If it was a Photoshop card, I'd much rather. I've not seen the card. I will be honest, but the card that I heard about is when they did some interview with him, and he was with his dog. You need to get a photo of him and his dog just for the animal.
His dog's decoy.
Yeah, right. It was a 7,200 on the Juan Soto card, the traded one, and then I mean, I'll answer the question quickly. I'm fine with the Photoshop. I mean, I think they did a phenomenal job with it. Like, it's funny. Like, I have a sports design background, and one of the things I used to do a lot of like sports designing on Instagram before I got into sports cards. And like one of the big things was jersey swaps. Like that was one of the big like niches almost. It was like a niche within that niche of it was like a niche within the niche of sports graphic design was like people doing jersey swaps. So like it's funny now, like you look on ESPN, like ESPN does jersey swaps and they're horrific. They're terrible. They're like Topps at least is doing a really good job. Like they don't have someone doing it on their phone, obviously. Like sometimes I think that's what ESPN and some of these companies are doing when someone gets traded. I look at it, I'm like, that's just not that player. Like they just literally either they put his head on someone else's body or they like try to morph a jersey that's not. Yeah, like I said, I think the Photoshop job is good, and I think that Topps does a good job with their Photoshops. With these types of cards, obviously, because you're not gonna Shohei Ohtani's not hitting in a Dodgers jersey yet. He does also have that card live right now of him at the press conference. So, hypothetically, if you did want his first Dodgers official with him actually wearing a Dodgers jersey, that card's available now. Not that Topps is paying.
How much do they sell for?
It's eight for 9 for the single card, and then it goes basically down per card if you order more. But yeah, I mean, like I said, hopefully, maybe Topps will pay us one day, but they're not paying us now. But they got a free plug for that card because that's up right now.
Hello.
Rich is getting a call right now from Jefferson Burdick, I believe.
Oh, from he actually it's Michael. He's getting a call from Michael Rubin to tell us that they're going to be cutting us a check for this episode.
We were guessing it's Darren Ravel. I asked if the Photoshop bothered anybody. Every card is Photoshop nowadays. Does not bother me at all. I completely agree with that, actually. Good morning, Warren. I'm a little bit behind in some of the hellos, but I did want to get back real quick. Dan, I thanked you on a couple shows. I don't know if you saw, but I got everything a while back and just wanted to thank you very much. Love the Ripken phone card. So thank you. Very nice to send that. I don't want to switch topics too quick when Rich gets back, but I want to talk about, and I think Adam, you brought up a good point in the Tom Brady card and the Disney drop. Topps took kind of two very different approaches to selling these, and I know you've covered both. do you mind explaining kind of I guess the Brady one, unless you've been under a rock, you saw the ads for that.
Yeah. I mean, with the Brady, this was, I think, one of the first real like marketing campaigns that we've seen within cards. Like, I know we've seen social media, we've seen, companies use social media, stuff like that. That's not, obviously, working in marketing, like I don't know, they must have spent a lot of money on this campaign. So like, I'm the thing that, I talked about this on the show actually 2 times this week, because one was just about the cards and then one was about the campaign, was like, I guess the thing I'm confused about, and maybe I'll ask you this, Danny, is like, the Bowman Draft is one of their most popular products. And sure, getting Tom Brady in Bowman Draft is a big deal, but it's like, it just seems odd that they would spend so much, which I get, like I said, I'm very mixed feelings between, like, it's good that they're spending money on their most popular product versus like, it's their most popular product, why are they spending money on this huge monster campaign? Now, obviously it's because they have Tom Brady in it, but I don't know. So, I mean, oops, sorry, excuse me. Like, for the Brady, like, it came out on 12/12, which, I mean, obviously that was probably planned. And then they had all of the, they had like Pedro, and they had Vlad Guerrero in the commercial that they had a commercial for. Like, that was a extremely well done commercial. And then they had the Patriots working with them. They had the MLB working with them. They had like the Hall of Fame stuff. So, I mean, it was like they must have spent a lot. It almost makes me think that this is where all the resources went from the QC people that like were QCing things this past year, and they had all these mix-ups, because it's just like this is not just a single person job. This is like a company-wide job that they put together with this campaign. Like, just because, working in marketing, I know how many people have to work on campaigns like this. So it's like, it's weird. To me, it's a little bit weird that they spent it on their biggest product, but at the same time, I guess it does make sense that they would do that. But yeah, so I mean, those are kind of my overall thoughts, at least on the Brady card, and then I'll let you guys go, and then I can kind of talk about the Disney drop a little bit after we kind of do a couple things on the Brady stuff.
Yeah, Rich, we're talking about the saturation of the Brady marketing.
It's fine. I mean, I've seen over the years, I've seen people advertise basic top sets when it comes out. There was some way back in the day after there was the correction in the market because of the baseball strike in the mid 90s. They started having baseball cards are cool again in the mid and late 90s. But every once in a while, there would still be Topps ads on TV, on Nickelodeon, trying to get back to the kids. It's fine. I mean, you want to get general interest if, it's a punchline now about we want to 10x the hobby. But how are you going to 10x the hobby unless you start reaching people that aren't collectors?
Mm-hmm.
And Brady is still amazingly popular. It's a great concept. What if there's a lot of people who have been drafted by baseball teams that did not play baseball or did not make the major leagues? Some are more famous than others. It's a great way to begin the concept. And you can have fun with it. And you can have fun. Fanatics is going to have other sports too. David Mark Winfield was drafted in baseball, football, and basketball.
And 4 leagues because of the ABA.
4 leagues because of the ABA and NBA, right?
Yep, ABA.
So you can put a David Mark Winfield basketball card into Bowman someday. He's a Hall of Famer in baseball. It's not going to be the same interest, but it's a cool concept to do. And once you have all the, it is something you can cross-brand up among sports. You can get players from Michael Jordan did play baseball. I mean, you can, I know it's upper deck, so maybe someday he won't have that. But, if Michael Jordan was available to Topps or Fanatics with their cross-marketing and all the leagues they're going to have in 2 or 3 years, you can cross-promote him into all the sports. Bo Jackson, we know. Deion Sanders, we know. They all played other sports. And I mean, there were even less, I'm using lesser names too. But the point is, this is something Fanatics can do that other card companies really haven't thought about or really don't want to or have not thought enough outside the box to do. So I don't have a problem with them publicizing it. You've got one of the most popular football players of all time, winning all those Super Bowls, going to be the number one commentator on Fox next year for football, so he'll stay in the news. Why not? I mean, and then if you get him to sign, even better. They've done a hobby publicity and they've done a public publicity. We want to 10x the hobby. Well, you're going to have to do things like that to 10x the hobby.
Right.
And making Tom Brady seem like he's interested in baseball cards is the first, I mean, the largest endorser I can ever remember endorsing the hobby. Rich, I mean, you said one of the most popular football players, one of the most popular athletes of all time. And when you have that player of that caliber saying, I'm on board with this, well, then my kids get interested, more people get interested. People are throwing out other names, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, but a lot of these guys, Tim Tebow. There's a bunch of people, and then you can do it in reverse sports. The Tony Gwynn basketball card would be a cool one. And Fanatics is going to have all the licenses. And to Rich's point, you need that to be able to do this. And if you don't have all the licenses to work together, and you don't have the influence with the athletes and the deals, then it can't get done.
And that's the other thing. Michael Rubin has a lot of these athletes on speed dial on his phone.
Right.
Panini's done a lot of great things over the years, but I don't think their CEOs, American and worldwide, have all these athletes on speed dial on their phone where, when Michael Rubin went to Rob Vieira's store and he saw some young girl and this was great PR with looking at cheap Devin Booker cards. Would you like to meet him? And he whips out his phone and they eventually met and he gave her some some stuff too. I would say merchandise, that's the wrong word, but some memorabilia.
Right.
And it worked out very well, but it's great publicity, but it's also, he's got those numbers on his phone. You and I don't have those numbers on our phone.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, too, I think the ad, these were my two thoughts two more of the thoughts I had on the ad was like, it feels like they're trying to win like some sort of marketing award for this campaign, because it really feels like like I said, it feels like one of the first full scale sports card campaigns that I can remember seeing in quite some time. I mean, yeah, like you said, sure, there's commercials on, Nickelodeon and ESPN for sports cards, but like this felt like it was bigger than sports cards in general. And that's kind of one of the things that will, the 10xing of the hobby. I don't know necessarily if there's gonna be a 10x or whatever it ends up being. Like, I mean, honestly, if you ask most collectors, they don't want the hobby to 10x. They want the hobby to stay the same. But like, that's, for content creators, for people like me, that's, I would like to see a 10x, but obviously it doesn't affect me as much because I'm not buying every single product. And the prices of them are buying every single card and price are going up because they're 10xing or whatever. But the other piece of it, I think, could be that maybe Fanatics is trying to get more investing into the company. And they're saying, look at this, we can do this marketing campaign. Look at what we did with, especially using Tom Brady as like, not even really a guinea pig, but like as the star of the marketing campaign. It's like, we did this with Tom Brady. We can do this with other athletes that we want to bring over, which because my prediction is I think they're going to do something similar with LeBron, if I'm going to be honest, because like they have Bronny James. They signed that agent from Rich Paul's, or the basketball. I forget what his title was. I think he's the director of basketball player relations, I think now, and he worked for Rich Paul's agency, who was LeBron's that's LeBron's, that's Rich Paul's LeBron's friend, that's their agency. And then, and now we have that other Bowman basketball card with the LeBron autograph in it. I wouldn't be surprised if in a year or 2 or 3 years, we see a very similar campaign somehow with LeBron. Obviously not to this extent, or they're going to have to come up with another concept, but I think that they're probably going to do something with LeBron once everything fully gets announced and maybe when they get the basketball product and they officially start really rolling these things out. The fact that they started with Brady, I think, is great because it's like, like you said, he's the biggest athlete probably in the United States, at least, other than maybe LeBron. So we'll see. But those are kind of just two of the things that I was thinking about on top of sort of all my other thoughts with these Brady cards.
Real quick, Adam. Somebody said Steel City DW. To your point, Adam, Fanatics may be using this as a test case for how they evolve the product line. So,
right, totally.
To your point there. Also, 10 times the hobby means different things to everybody. It could be 10 times the revenue, 10 times the consumers. Hopefully, it's not 10 times the cards. I saw that comment, and I don't think we want every set multiplied by 10. And Mike Petty, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. That 10 times, you bring more people in, and they're not going to be the traditional collectors, and you hope that people don't take advantage of them. They certainly agree with that.
Right.
No argument at all.
We went through a 10x I'm old enough to remember we went through the 10x in the late 80s and early 90s. And yes,
and that was detrimental.
It was long term was detrimental, but it was great at the time. And one of the things you have to remember is there was also before the baseball strike, it was still a very strong business. People think the peak of the overproduced era was 90, 91, but because these are public numbers that we had to publish in the Beckett magazine with what they call the OMC, the official magazine circulation that you had to publish each year, we were actually printing more Beckett magazines in 93 than we were in 91. So it was a long-term effect too that could have stayed even longer without the combination of the baseball strike and the hockey lockout. So, there are factors sometimes that come beyond our pale, but the longer there's hobby piece in the sports, the better off is, and I think it's important that we understand that there's going to be bumps. There have to be bumps. Nothing's a smooth ride upward and nothing's a safe glide downwards. But there are going to be bumps. It's going to be okay. And the beauty about collecting is an individual pursuit. You can collect any way you want. If you say, I want nothing to do with Tom Brady's 2023 Bowman cards in the football product. I don't even want to know anything about 2023 cards. I only want 1973 and before, because that was the last year Topps cards in series. That's fine. That's the beauty. You can choose what you want to do and how you want to do it. We're covering the topics of today, but just remember, collecting's what you want to do. Being a dealer and being a collector are two very different things.
Real quick, I love this comment. Didn't they make 1989 Upper Deck set for 3 years? Rich, I think we've been hearing the stories about the production of that Griffin card. And to my knowledge, it's still being produced.
Well, I will tell you this much. That may be the one card you could keep producing and keep selling.
The number one all-time submitted card to PSA. So it's very interesting.
Can we give a shout out here, and we may have talked about it last week, to our buddy from Gemrate,
Ryan Stasinski. Yeah, absolutely.
Who has now created a top 100, and I think you talked about this, by the way, in your Hobby News Daily recap that I listened to today, this morning, that he's got now a top 100 recap of a population report covering all the card companies of 100 cards, and that's probably going to grow over the years. Right. And it's a great concept.
It's
much needed.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And honestly, like, I don't know if Dan, you have the link for it that we could put in the chat, or put his Twitter or something in the chat, because like it really is. I mean, the thing that I talked about on the show, and I know I keep referencing what I talked about on the show, and I'm trying to not do that, but
it's quite all right. Don't hold back.
No, the more you reference the show, the better off you are.
But what I said was, like, what has happened in the hobby is tools like this have been built. Tools like Card Ladder, tools like the Sports Card Investor platform, like people. It feels like, and Rich, you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong here. It feels like maybe in like the 80s and 90s and maybe even the 2000s, early 2000s, sort of when eBay was not around, and then when it was just kind of starting, it feels like a lot of, you're using Beckett magazine for pricing, but like there was not this real-time data on the price of a card going up. Like, it was like you would have to either wait a month for the magazine to come out to see if the card went up, or like you just wouldn't know if a card was going up or down in pricing, because it's like you don't know all of the sales. And for the most part, a lot of sales now are happening online. So like these tools are just helping collectors become much smarter, which I think is good for the hobby, because it's helping, you're not, new people can come in, and the learning curve, that's sort of maybe the good way to put it. The learning curve has dropped significantly. So it's like new collectors coming in, they don't have to worry if they're buying the right card or if they're paying the right price. It's like the learning curve of somebody new coming in and trying to buy the card or buy a card they want at the correct price is like super easy now, where like a couple years ago, maybe not a couple years, let's say the 2000s, somebody might buy a card and they may have no idea if they paid the right price. They may have paid a couple $100 too much for the card because like there was no, good tool for card pricing tracking. So it's like the learning curve is down significantly, and tools like what GemRate, what they put out, it's a phenomenal tool. And I mean, I love looking at the data, and it has it has like PSA, SGC, BGS, and CGC, all four of their pop reports all put into one pop report basically. And I'd imagine it's probably similar to what Card Ladder did. Like, Card Ladder didn't start out with all of these cards on there. They started adding cards day by day by day. And now they have one of the biggest databases in all of sports cards, which is why they're that's why they're owned by PSA now, honestly, because they built such a good platform. So it's like, this is probably going to be something similar where they add cards and they add more stuff. But the tool when I saw it at first, I was blown away. It's a phenomenal tool for people who are interested in, data on these types of cards.
Yeah, I do want to say it was interesting. And I almost put this into our group chat when I was listening this morning. But you brought up an interesting point that Dr. Beckett, who is also a regular on Hobby Hotline, and I discussed on a recent podcast about when we were back at Beckett and doing pricing back in the day, we depended on private sales, our knowledge of dealers that would tell us truthful prices. We would go to the shows, the famous line about how much we spent to send the analysts and to the shows to see what was going on. And today, and this came up in we had a Hobby News Daily group chat, and this came up with Bobby Burrell, how the difference between yesterday, where we depended on private sales and our knowledge of people,
right,
and today's public sales are two very different things. And it's a very different dichotomy between knowing, and we don't always know even if the sale goes through. You can have somebody leave positive feedback and then renege on a buy.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
So you don't know unless you know. And I mean, you presume, but it's never 100%.
My favorite way to buy, if I had my druthers, is in person at a show every single time. The problem is where are the cards? And sometimes that, Rich, I'm sure you believe in buying on ComC, and there's an eBay, and there's plenty of sites where I can find the cards that I won't find at a show. And so that's where it forces me more online and more into the data. When I'm at a show, if I see a card, there's so much back and forth. There's what else is in the room. There's the eye appeal. When you're holding a card, it seems to be different than when you look at it on a screen. So I still prefer to buy face to face at a show, given my chance.
Well, honestly, so do I, but I'm also blessed that literally across the street from this office is the Dallas Card Show.
I know, you always rub that in on me.
I rub that. I'm sorry. I mean, it's a blessing. I get it. Hey, I want to give Kyle Robertson and his team credit. I mean, they used to do 40, 50 table shows every month. Now they do 600 table shows 6 times a year or 5 times a year. They have not yet announced a date for June or July. So we will just call it 5 times a year. And I'm blessed. And I know a few of the dealers, and they save me stuff. So I'm not trying to get everything. I'm very happy with my little corner of the world, but I understand how blessed I am to have people who actually just let me go. And we get that, and we see Jim there, and we talked about this on the last podcast, how there's almost a camaraderie of those of us that go through the discount boxes.
Mm.
But
and what's the etiquette, Rich? What's that etiquette?
That etiquette is, simply put, just be nice to everybody, but stand up for your rights. Don't do stupid things. If I'm in a row, don't go in the same row I'm in. Or try to, if the guy's got 50 boxes, you don't have to be in the same box I'm in. Go to a different box. That's really it in a nutshell.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've all found good stuff in these boxes.
Coming off the Tom Brady conversation, and I'd be interested in a lot of people in the chat's view, is this Disney Chrome 100 drop that was done, and it was done, I believe, UK only.
Yeah.
And it was a surprise drop. It was not on a release schedule, is my understanding. Adam, do you know more about this?
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of following those Disney cards, and there was, excuse me, there was a Chinese Disney, or there was a Chinese company that did a Disney drop earlier this year, I think called Phantom. I know there's a different name. I forget how it's like Conco. I forget the name of the other one that they call it, but it was that. I think that was like early March-ish. They dropped out those cards, and I mean, they were super popular. I mean, we saw boxes kind of when the stuff got announced, like go pretty crazy because people in the United States were trying to buy them. And then last year in 2022, there was a Pixar drop that a Japanese company did. And if I had to guess, I mean, because I was trying to brainstorm why they would do it in the UK versus in the United States. I have to assume that there's like some sort of tariff that or some sort of tax that's like not in Europe, not in the UK, that like potentially the US has. Like if people from outside the country are trying to order something from the United States, there has to be some sort of tax that doesn't exist in Europe, and that's why they're dropping it in Europe.
Just expensive shipping charges, I think.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, I'm thinking maybe the other thing that I'm thinking is maybe they looked at maybe they have some sort of data that says like here are the excuse me. Maybe they have some sort of data that says we know that like this country would be most interested in this country and this country, and UK just happens to be right in the middle. Where if they did it in the United States, there are, I don't know, you have to fly or you have to ship them in a boat. I don't know if that people do that with sports cards necessarily, but like, so I guess, but they probably would fly, whatever. But you got to see the point here. I'm just imagining that they have the data, Topps and Fanatics, they have the data that says we know that countries in Europe are going to be interested in this, and even if the United States and North America are interested in it, it's cheaper to get the cards shipped there to here than it would be from here to there. I think that's probably if I had to guess, and I think also Random Esports, he had a good comment down, or they had a good comment down there. Yeah, they're coming out that same Chinese company is coming out with a Marvel set in like the next in a month. So that those cards are probably going to be, I mean, I guess they'll be big. I mean, Upper Deck does do Marvel cards as well, but I'm guessing again, maybe it's something where it's like this company is trying to get the licenses, which actually Marvel is Disney as well. So I don't know. I mean, Disney's licensing department, I put out a video. I said Disney's licensing department has been busy these past couple of years. And, the only other thing I can think of is that the license that they have with Disney says that they can't sell it in the United States, or they have to sell it in, the UK, I guess. Maybe that's part of the licensing deal that they did potentially. Because also, sorry, one other thing, just because it was a random drop. So it's like Disney, this seems like it's a pretty interesting big product, and they just dropped it. They just dropped it out of nowhere. So maybe it's like a limited licensing. I don't really know. I mean, these are kind of just all the things I'm speculating on about why they would drop it in the UK and not drop it in the United States.
Well, I looked online. It looks like the boxes are going roughly $300 and up, and then the shipping runs looks like $30 to $50 from the UK. So I'm betting that it's a licensing issue also. But it also builds up a little bit of hype. When you do a drop like that, they probably added, to the free media and the marketing a lot. And I just, I think the more people go into non-sports cards, the more, it might not be a hobby shop, and a local card shop may not be the best distribution for a Disney 100 Chrome set.
Right.
So there might be other ways to distribute that better. Rich, excuse my ignorance. How much does ComC do with non-sports? Anything?
A ton.
Right.
We have one of the most robust, if not the most robust, non-sports. I want to use the word catalog that I've ever seen, and we get a lot of non-sports cards in, both old and new. And there's a lot coming in every day. And I mean, I'm amazed, and it's not just American. Tons of Japanese stuff comes in. Tons of other foreign stuff comes in. It is the most. I learn every day something about non-sports cards that I've never seen before. I do not know anything. I want to state for the record, I don't know a darn thing about Disney 100 Chrome. So as I said, to paraphrase Will Rogers in the 1930s, all I ever learned about Disney 100 Chrome is what I learned from Adam and his podcast.
Wow, I do remember him saying that.
Right. Ziggy says that the license restriction on Disney Chrome in USA, he's purchased from the UK before.
Since Ziggy's mentioning, he had a great question for us earlier, but I would like us to punt on that one till next week, because I think it's more appropriate for an end of the year show.
Yep.
He asked about, what type of year do you think Fanatics had? And I think we can expand that to what type of year did Fanatics, Panini, Upper Deck, and other card companies have. But I think that's a really appropriate question for next week as an end of the year recap show. Also talking about how the national this year was in Chicago and exploded, with how many booths and how many corporates there were, and what they're going on. I think that's that's just, unless something breaks in the next week, which I doubt, whereas we're approaching the Christmas break. But I think that's a great question, but I'd like us to punt till next week.
I think you just jinxed it. There will be major hobby news in the next week.
Hey, that'll make the show even better then.
Right.
Right.
Here, I wanted to touch on one thing as we head on the home stretch here. Adam, you had a great thing you brought to my attention. It was the list of the 10 most graded players of the past year. So this is not the 10 most popular cards. This is not the 10 most popular players. Right, but this is the 10 most graded players.
Specifically PSA, I'm pretty sure.
PSA. Yeah. Which, I'd be curious, but I would assume the numbers are similar. But for PSA, the most graded players, Shohei makes perfect sense. Jordan is always on the list. Julio Rodriguez, didn't they have a grading special at some point?
I don't know. I think he was the athlete that was like, actually, maybe. I'm not sure.
If anybody remembers. Trevor Lawrence is a surprise. I think there was a lot of build up to him going into the season.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy is likely number 11. Well, I guarantee whatever Brock Purdy is, it's a lot more than they thought it was going to be when they made the cards.
Right. Yeah.
Rich, anything on there catch you off guard or anything?
Well, I don't want to say off guard, but it's interesting that we were talking about 89 Upper Deck Griffey. He's still in the top 10 of most popular players graded.
Yeah.
His appeal just shows that he has the multi-generational appeal, plus a lot of people I'm going to call them the 40-somethings, that came back to the hobby in recent years, especially after, they rediscovered the cards in their closet during the pandemic. Oh, Griffey was my favorite player growing up. Okay, let me send these in and have these slabbed and whatever. So I think it shows that there's an enduring popularity. And really I don't want to say a surprise, but it just shows. I mean, the other names you kind of expect, and Trevor Lawrence sounds higher than it should be, but remember, he was a college star. He was known in college, good looking kid, very popular, one of the best NFL quarterbacks. And
if I remember correctly, his cards were delayed coming out. So I wonder if everybody finally got his cards and rushed to grade.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, also too, like, the Jaguars made the playoffs last year. So like of all the hobby kind of stars, I suppose you could call them, like he probably had the best season to season jump from the season before where I forget if the season before was his rookie year or if it was the season before that. But, because obviously we had during his rookie season, he had Urban Meyer as the coach, and he literally got fired midway through the season of his first season as the coach. Like that should tell you how bad
wasn't that the story that Urban Meyer didn't know who Aaron Donald was?
Something like that. Yeah,
I don't know if that's true, but it's a great story.
Yeah, right. Like there was some story about him like going out to the bars like on a Saturday before the game or something like that. So yeah, he got fired, and then they brought in Doug Peterson, which I think maybe some people within sports cards maybe people forget. Like Doug Peterson was the coach that really brought up Carson Wentz and was like made Carson Wentz the MVP candidate back in 2017. So they bring him in this year, and after making the playoffs last year, he was probably the guy that a lot of people looked at and said, well, he's going to take that next big jump, hopefully in the playoffs and, maybe make a Super Bowl or like maybe, maybe have an MVP caliber season. And the Jaguars are pretty good. He did get hurt recently, but so I would say he's maybe the most surprising and least surprising player on that list. I'm going to be honest. Cause like all the other names we know, I mean, they're, if you look at the overall, I saw a graphics, I think it was Sports Card Investor put out like last week. The most cards graded in total by any player was like Michael Jordan had like 1.2 million, and then Ken Griffey Jr. had like 900,000. So it's like people are still submitting those cards for those players. So I'm actually even a little bit surprised that like Griffey isn't a little bit higher up the list. I mean, maybe at this point, I don't know how much, I don't know which cards people are grading for Griffey. I mean, same with even Michael Jordan. It's like everybody is just getting every Griffey or Jordan card graded. Probably because that's just if you want to get in a slab, it's probably not super expensive anymore. Yeah, the Griffey inserts, that's a good point.
And I don't know. I mean, Jordan inserts too.
Jordan, right? Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
And I like this comment. And Adam, would you mind touching on this?
Yeah, sure. Mantle, Griffey, Trout is a story of generational names that will persist in popularity. Did I persist? Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. I think the point is that those three will end up, outliving maybe Trevor Lawrence and hobby collectability.
Right. Yeah. Well, and also Trout's not on this list, so I mean, if I had to guess, he's probably in the top. He has to be in the top 15. But like, I think it's interesting. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of the top 10. Are football. I think it's an interesting list because and then 1, 2, 3 are basketball, and then 1, 2, 3 are baseball. So it's really, I mean, it's a mixture of all the kind of top sports. So, I mean, I think that's a good thing if you're kind of looking at like overall interest in all of these sports, like the fact that this year the list consists of every kind of important sport within sports cards. Not that hockey isn't important. It's just not a sport that I feel like a lot of people get. It's not as large a sport as some of these other ones. Like the gap is much more significant than I think like basketball to baseball.
Yes, that's another Urban Meyer story.
That's the one you were referring to. Was after.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yes. Rich, throughout kind of grading, I think people forget grading didn't start until the 90s. Am I right on that?
You are correct. Grading began in the 90s. I know we began Beckett grading like 98, 99. PSA's first cards are 91. It really took about, and to me, when eBay and other internet sites started becoming a dominant way of selling cards, I've always been a proponent of grading. And I always used to say, grading cards, and I'm not saying nobody's perfect, including grading card companies, and I want that clear, but they're pretty good. They're very good. And one of the things is that if I buy a PSA 7 1968 Topps Mickey Mantle card, or a BVG 7 Mickey Mantle card, or an SGC 7, or a CSG or CGC 7 Mickey Mantle card, I have a pretty darn good idea what it looks like. And I can buy that card with a lot more confidence than, Danny, I trust you as a grader, but if you say near mint, your near mint might be my VGX, or something may happen in the mail. A graded card is more secure. I mean, you can't break those Beckett holders in the mail. If you can break a Beckett holder in the mail, it's gone through being ran under a truck. You know, and so it really helps sales worldwide and on the internet, because it gives you a more comfortable feeling of what you're buying. And I want to stress, nobody's perfect, but it's good. And that's why I use the PSA 7, because the odds are a 7 is a 7.
Yes. And, you know, Ziggy makes the point that grading's a third-party opinion. He's not wrong about that. But it gives you some range of consistency. Maybe one company is off a number, maybe it's a half a grade, whatever it is. But you're usually going to know the difference between a 2 and an 8 is going to tell you a lot more. So I agree with, opinions are not perfect.
Yeah.
And also, I think we're all in agreement on that. But I think that's why you have a good general view, not that it's dead on. I mean, before PSA went to 0.5, a card, technically, if it's a 7, could be between 6.51 and 7.49.
Yep.
If you think about it,
and I think too, like, range. I think too, like, there are, I think I'm going to use this word correctly, anecdotes. Like if you look on Twitter or Instagram or any of these things, sure, there's like a couple times where you'll see somebody graded a card with all the different companies and they gave them wildly different grades. I would say that's not what happens all the time. Like if you were to do that experiment 100 times, I'm sure you're obviously going to get a wide range potentially of a card. You kind of also have to look at, like, if you're breaking a card out of a slab, it's more work that has to be done. More fingers are going to be on that card. So, whether you think handling a card affects the grade or not, like, it's just every single time you're taking it out of the slab and getting it regraded, there's more people that are handling the card, all of these types of things. And so I just think that, like, that you will see those types of posts online, because those are the type of posts that do well, because a lot of people like to hate on grading companies, and that's just, it is what it is. Like, so you're going to see those posts do well. You're not going to see, obviously, the posts of somebody, I don't know, cracking a card and it getting basically the same grade, because it's like, well, who cares if it got the same grade? Like, that just means that the grading is more on point than people want to admit, which I am also in the sense that, like, grading is, it's one person's opinion. Like, we keep using that word. It's one person's opinion on what the card looks like. Sure, there's probably a couple people looking at certain cards, but the PSA just has to grade so many cards that, like, they're looking at it quick, moving it on, looking at it quick, moving it on. Maybe less now than they were back in, like, a couple years ago, but that's kind of the process, at least from my knowledge of how that stuff is going on.
Good comment here from Steel City again. Also, it's easier to know the difference between a 5 and 7 in vintage versus knowing the difference between an 8 and a 10 in chrome.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt that the different types of cards make it easier or harder, or different ways to look at them. Some people, like my vintage cards, I don't care about the grade at all. It's all about the visual appeal to me. Mm-hmm. If I was buying a new card, I don't know why, I don't really want a chrome in a 6. Something about that just seems like it seems like a modern day beater.
I don't think I want any 2023 card in a 6.
That's right. That's what, so it's, I don't know. I think for vintage,
you expect the card. You expect the average grade of a card from this year to be 8.5 to 9.
Yeah.
It won't be perfect, but it'll be nice.
Yes, absolutely. Mookie says, I'd be interested in a top 50 most graded in 2023. Probably fair amount of players into that list who are just 2024 hobby irrelevant every year, every
Yeah.
year, every year, every year. And that's why the comment that Adam, I asked you to read before, Mantle, Trout, generational guys. I think, Rich, going back, I'm going to bring this full circle. Our original conversation on Shohei, he's really making now, he's the next generational talent.
You know, what's interesting is Shohei is Ichiro to the next level.
Right.
Well, Shohei is probably, the best natural player since Mantle,
He's the fastest player in baseball. His probably he can throw faster than anybody, and he's got a ton of power. I mean, he is, in a sense, the Babe Ruth of this generation. And I mean, he's getting hurt a little more than Babe Ruth, but that was what Babe Ruth could do. Yeah. Nobody else in 100 years, when we say once in 100 years, Shohei truly is once in 100 years. I mean, we haven't had pitchers who could basically lead the league in ERA and home runs in the same year since Babe Ruth.
Right.
Well, I think it's only because they didn't draft me, but
Well, and I actually I have one other thing is, yeah. I mean, I think with Trout, I know a lot of people in the comments are saying Trout's overrated now, he's fallen off or whatever, but it's like things can change very quickly. If Trout has one MVP type season and brings the Angels to the playoffs, like everyone's opinion on Trout is going to change very quickly. I think just a good example is like Russell Wilson this year. Through the first couple games of the season, Russell Wilson was like pretty bad, and everyone was kind of like crapping all over him. And I looked at him, I'm like, he's good. Like he's not a bad quarterback. And you look at the last like 8 or 9 games, and he's like been playing at like a really high level, and like the Broncos are like almost in front of the Chiefs in terms of their division. So it's like I just think that obviously players that are hobby relevant, I think it could happen very quickly. I also would say definitely it could happen very quickly in the other direction. Look at Mac Jones, for example. He was going into this year. This was the last year for him really to kind of figure everything out, and he didn't. But like the past couple of years, it was like, okay, well maybe he'll turn it around, and then he kind of just kept going down, which obviously not super pumped about that. But we will move on from me crying about my Patriots.
Well, the Patriots had a nice 20-year run, so
dang.
I was going to say nobody feels bad for you, Adam, on this one.
Yeah, I mean, you should, because my team's in last place for the first time ever. So
my team's leading the division.
Back in the 60s, the Patriots weren't always that good either. They were good in the early days of the AFL, but then slumped for a long time. I mean, they really had problems in the 60s and 70s, and every once in a while they'd crawl to the playoffs and then crawl back. So, I mean, you had a great 20-year run. Please enjoy the fact
that's why I enjoy sport. I think that's one reason why, I don't want to throw my rings in everyone's faces here, but I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy sports cards so much, is because like I can root for players who aren't on my team. Like I can root for any player in the MLB because the Red Sox have won a couple championships, or the obviously the Patriots have won 6 or whatever, but I can root for the younger players because I don't have to. I mean, I do root for my teams, but I don't have to worry about I'm not living and dying by except for maybe the Celtics. Those are that's really the only team that I am living and dying by. But that's kind of besides the point. But like I said, it's enjoying it's enjoying players nowadays versus. I could see how other people may like not enjoy the sports the same way.
Well, thank you, Ziggy, for that nice comment about Adam. Yeah. And I think we're approaching the top of the hour. So
I was just about to bring us back around. I always love asking my going out question. Rich, you doing anything for the hobby this weekend?
I already talked about that at the beginning of the show.
I know you are.
So, yes, I'm going to the B Sports Cards tonight. Yes. For their Secret Santa trade, the trade night. And it'll be a party there, too. They'll have food. They'll have drinks. Last year, they had cookies. They also have giveaways to those that participated. I think the owner posted on Facebook and IG. It's like $25,000 worth of stuff he's been able to corral to give to all of us, too. So, I mean, we'll get extra stuff, too. Plus, since it just came out, I will make sure I buy a Heritage high number box because I am a Heritage guy. And I'm looking, and I don't care. The good thing with Heritage, you don't care what you get out of the box. It's the fun. It's like hey, I'm back in 1974, and I remember opening 74 Topps cards. So, and I've sorted them in my life. So, to me, that's a pretty good hobby day in itself too.
Not bad for an NFL weekend. Also, Adam, what are you doing?
I mean, like I said before, I've been posting more videos on TikTok, so I'm probably actually going to record some videos this weekend that I have. It's the weekend, have a little more time. So I mean, Heroes for Sale on TikTok. I've been, trying to get back into making videos a little bit more often than I had been, because I love hobby content. Making content is my hobby, so it's like and I like doing the stuff around sports cards. So that's kind of my thing. And then also just one other point is I always try and say this before my shows is like there's going to be new people coming in. Just be nice to these people. Like I know that sometimes within sports cards it can get a little dicey, it can get a little hectic, and if you're on Twitter or Instagram or all of these types of things. But for everybody that's creating content or even just people answering questions on Twitter, just be nice to these new people coming in. At one point you were in their shoes and didn't know anything about the hobby in the same way. I always want to say that at the end of most shows that I'm on.
Absolutely. And since Adam's getting a lot of love in the chat room, you can find him every place he mentioned, and I'll be proud to say you can hear him every morning on Hobby News Daily podcast. He does the Morning Minute, so that's his short morning podcast every day of the week, and the weekly summary put out on the weekends. With all that being said, my hobby weekend is going to be sorting some cards, actually hanging out maybe with Chris Sewell on a collection, and we'll see from there. To everybody in the chat room, thanks for joining us. Happy holidays. And I don't know when I'll be on next, but I'll see you then.
Well, it'll either be you or John, so we'll see one of you next week.
Take care, guys. See ya.